The military orders of the Storm Cross stood in 1370 as the backbone of the League itself, each one representing a national tradition and martial custom that brought a unique set of skills to the battlefield. Each one under a Grand Master which commanded them, and each of the orders under the broader command of the Lethalators, and the Lethalators under the command of the Supreme Inquisitor Militant, and him under the command of the Bishop of Rhodes, with the Kings of the League having established the orders and ensuring that they met their manpower obligations to the League as a whole, with each order having their headquarters somewhere in their country of origin, from where they would train recruits and establish new internal policy. Now, in 1370, there were about 10 military orders, with each one boasting roughly 70,000 men. The state of warfare was in flux, as gunpowder technologies spurred a gradual departure from armored melee combat and towards ranged gunpowder combat. But, in the late 14th century, that transition was not complete. As such, military strategy saw a unique blend of these two styles. The standard among Christian armies was the pike square, where divisions of pikemen marched in formation around gunpowder detachments as they would fire, advance, reload, and fire again. This was lethal to most cavalry charges, and as such, these formations proved rather difficult to dislodge. In addition to this core, cannon batteries acted as artillery to soften up the enemy lines, and were especially useful in the case of sieges. Cavalry still played a sizable role, with most of them being lightly armored lancers who would ride close to a formation and pick off the edges before circling back, armed with an especially long couched lance or spear. But at this time, and indeed for some time after, the shining star of the age was the armored knight. Armor had become sufficiently advanced to close most gaps and vulnerabilities while also preserving speed and mobility. Layers of chainmail and padding beneath the armor ensured that they were nearly unkillable by conventional means. Even a direct strike from a flanged mace could at most dent the armor, or perhaps dislocate a joint, so your only chance to actually take down a knight was to either get a shot off at close range, nailing him at a range within 40 feet, or to be another lethally equipped knight doing direct combat with him. For the gun, anything further than 40 feet, and you'd merely dent his armor, and that's even discounting whether you could even manage to hit him at all, given that the aim of the day was not too sharp with a smoothbore firearm. Though, if you were lucky enough to strike him with a cannonball, then that would also put him in a grave. But this too was a bit of a long shot. As such, the military orders decorated their treasured knights in the finery of their day, and even sometimes equipped them with 2 loaded pistols in addition to their other armaments, a practice that would come to be known as the Scythian style, given how that people of the steppe had innovated such a practice to begin with. Now, these are the military orders of the League of the Blazing Stormy Cross of Saint Michael and all the Martyrs as they stood in 1370. First, there was the Order of Saint Michael, Tagmato Hagio Michael, headquartered in the Grand Fortress on the island of Rhodes, located along the coast just outside the Holy City itself. The Order of Saint Michael featured blackened armor for the purposes of commemorating the dead martyrs, with orange tunics reflecting the traditional color of their homeland. In terms of weaponry, they were partial to a long spear with a broad point, and boasted a large, circular shield, which was often made of bronze, and boasting a large, aggressive central boss, with the shield as a whole either adorned with an image of an angel, or sometimes left blank for the purposes of humility. In terms of combat, the Order of Saint Michael, being located on an island, was partial to naval combat, and was even one of the only orders to independently operate their own combat fleet of several hundred ships, which they often shared or even totally loaned out to other orders as they had need of them. That is why, on rare occasions, some of these knights could be seen brandishing tridents. On land, they were good at area control, especially in mountainous areas, and in any case, they formed up into tight unified columns, which were defended at the flanks by cavalry which rode with pistols in the Scythian style. Next, there was the Order of Saint Eidobald the Good, Tagma Sant Eidobald Dobros. headquartered in the remains of the royal palace in Zoliam, where a memorial to Saint Eidobald stands on the site of his martyrdom just outside the building. The Order of Saint Eidobald features knights with shaggy black fur coats, with red and white tunics and a helmet with a prominent dorsal crest, this appearance being identical to the style of Eidobald's men during the Pyrian Civil War, an appearance made directly to honor their saintly patron. They emulated Eidobald the Good in terms of their weaponry as well, opting for bastard swords which were commonly wielded with both hands. The fighting style of the Order of St. Eidobald was aggressive and individual, with this order serving mainly as a distinctive solo element to add to a wider army composition. In most cases, knights of this order fought alone and on foot, charging into the enemy ranks and hacking away as he pleased in a heroic display of skill and bravery, with the duty of surrounding infantry to match his zeal and protect his charge. They excelled in one-on-one engagements and were most often used as direct counters to armored enemies of a similar caliber. Next, there was the Order of Redemption, Tagmai Raitapna. This was another Pyrian order headquartered in the province of Buza, a landlocked area right on the border with Rhodes and Guthonia. Their headquarters is not a castle or even a building, but a sprawling camp complex with tents aligned in neat order and communal storm shelters reserved for special occasions. The Order of Redemption featured knights with long visored helmets with black plumes on top representing their past sins, and red accents throughout, including red flags bearing holy symbols affixed to their backs. The Order of Redemption is unique among the orders in that they are a penitent order, meaning that membership in the order is a result of required punishment for crime. Men in the order were given the choice between death or service by the Rhodian Inquisition, and these men chose service. Most were sentenced for crimes like manslaughter or unreformed cultural Satanism, and if the Inquisition saw potential in their build, they were given the choice. The Order of Redemption is supplied with short, thick spears meant for getting up close and personal, and they serve as an independent unit that works separately from wider armies, specializing in edging around enemy positions on foot, wedging open tough vulnerabilities in their defenses, and being added to desperate gridlocks in hopes of turning the tide of battle. This order is carefully watched by agents of the Inquisition, who are deeply embedded in the order and serve as its officers. While off-duty, the men wear uncomfortable horsehair tunics and perform various kinds of penance. What exactly that is actually up to them, but should they go too light on themselves, the Inquisition could very well review their status as men of the penitent order. These knights are paid a simultaneous respect and suspicion by regular folk, who view them like reformed drunkards of a much more dangerous sort, who could relapse at any time. Next, there is the Order of the North, Phytha Tharthans, headquartered in Warschau in Guthonia, residing in a great castle near the border with the pagans of Swabia, named Garthsthaurthizos, meaning Castle of the Northerners, this structure being the largest castle east of the Vistula River. The Knights of the Northern Order wear blackened armor with yellow tunics to represent their homeland of Guthonia, and wield extremely long two-handed swords. They are extremely lethal, singular threats, specializing in area denial and position holding, using their extremely long blades to cover a massive area with relative speed. This made them perfectly suited for guard work, supplying castles and fortifications with men while guarding important individuals, and also suited to an army's back line, cutting down deserters and preventing flanking maneuvers from the rear. For a single knight of the Northern Order could cleave the legs off a horse while it was running in a full gallop and cut a lancer's spear in twain. If Knights of the Northern Order are guarding a space or person, chances are slim that they'd ever fail at their guardianship. Next, there were the Order of the Kreshniki, who were unique in that they represented a two-tiered order. First, the lower rank members were regular conscripts and volunteers, while the officer and commander ranks were reserved for those of the Kreshniki people in particular. Descendants of the Common Crusade who followed Brother Kreshnik to combat the Muslims of the East, these men are mean and effective. Headquartered in the mountains of Anatolia belonging to Rhodes, they are immediately identifiable by their conspicuous sheepskin cloaks and ram horns on their helmets. They are all equipped with a mace of some sort, as well as pistols in the Scythian style, and excel in rough terrain. If there's a battle being fought in the hilly highlands, in the mountains, in the swamps, or even in the deserts, the Knights of the Order of the Kreshniki honor the legacy of their forebear and namesake, Saint Kreshnik, by being driven, dangerous, and hardy men for the cause of Christ. Next, there's the Peninsular Order, Shekla Peninsulorum, headquartered in the city of Rome in Lucania. The Peninsular Order was comparatively lightly armored, built for lightning-fast cavalry raids and field skirmishes, identifiable by their blue horsehair plumes and cavalry swords with curved hilts and leather straps for better grip. Truly, they could intercept a rival cavalry charge in a heartbeat, and decimate an infantry division by way of 1,000 cuts. Next, there's the Order of the Western Lightning, Mende Beldeco Chimistaran Ordena, headquartered on the Isle of Ebusus in Vasconia. Identifiable by their broad-rimmed combination helmets and their distinctive black and white trunk hose pants, they were equipped with axes and light shields, sometimes opting for one-handed axes for a combination of a more speedy offense and defense, and other times dual-wielding a heavier implement while wearing the shield upon the wrist or forearm in such a way that it did not interfere with the proper use of a two-handed polearm. The Order of Western Lightning specialized in sieges, breaching, and subsequent urban combat. They often led siege operations themselves, conducting distance calculations, siege engine positioning, and siege scheduling. When the siege itself was underway, they formed battering ram teams, coordinated wall hooks and breaching ladders, established shielded movement lanes, and even firefighting operations to ensure the siege camp wasn't set alight by flaming arrows. Once inside, knights of this order engaged in house-to-house raiding and specialized in taking and locking down entire streets by clearing houses and setting up blockades. If the League wanted a city taken in time for church on Sunday, they'd call in this indefectible order. Next, there's the Order of Saint Domneiu the Martyr, Ordu Sanctu Domneiu Martyr, headquartered near the city of Divio in eastern Santonia. They are easily identified by their classic look: gleaming armor, sometimes stylized to be literally white, covered in crosses with finely crafted swords and strong heater shields that could be used in tandem, one to cut and stab, and the other to block and bash, most of this being done from horseback. Now, it is common for the Knights of the Military Orders to be found on horseback, but it is uncommon to find an order so singularly obsessed with horsemanship, and to find an order so especially deadly upon a steed. Knights of the Order of Saint Domneiu, highly specialized as heavy cavalry, meant to charge ahead on their heavy armored steeds and crash through enemy lines, chasing down and slaughtering enemy cavalry, and even locking down flank attempts from enemy forces. Upon their specially bred horses meant for strength and speed, they were often the deadliest individual units on any battlefield, and if a contested field needed to be won as soon as possible, adding these men to the fray was sure to turn the tide in your favor. Next, there was the Order of Saint Stratomartys, Yahad Thais Halgan Stratomartys, headquartered near the city of Westfalen in the heavily Christianized Anglian lowlands, identifiable by their brown fur cloaks and large, round, embossed shields, often bearing a cross ringed by passages of scripture written down in runic script. They combined their mastery of long swords with large, round shields and comparatively light armor to make for a highly adaptable fighting style, forming up into groups of battle brothers that act independently from larger armies, specializing in daring raids, often penetrating deep behind enemy lines to plunder military camps and even entire towns, throwing enemy forces into disarray. They have a unique issue among the orders, however, and that is the pagan crown of Anglia didn't establish them, and refuses to participate in their manpower efforts. Instead, the mayor of the city of Westfalen, which independently inducted the Christian lowlands into the League of the Storm Cross in the first place, formed this military order against the wishes of the king and without his knowledge. As such, the Order of St. Stratomartys regularly falls short of its manpower goals, netting less than 40,000 men instead of their optimal 70,000. Regardless, they are still a highly effective order, and many view their extraordinary bravery as near suicidal. Finally, there is the Order of the Sons of Ancyta, Yorens Vordenats Ancytai, named for the Christian royal house of Armenia, founded by a usurper named Khosrow of Ancyta, whose descendants, the House of Ancyta, are now the regional governors of the province of Armenia within the Patrimony of Rhodes. The Sons of Ancyta are headquartered in a fortress at the foot of the Pontic Mountains in the province of Tokat, identifiable by their distinctly Eastern style of armor, with a tall, conical helmet and arrayed in several layers of armor plates and lamellar and padding, with orange accents throughout, equipped with a heavy, medium-length axe meant to rend flesh and splinter bone. The Sons of Ancyta specialize in field fortification and scorched earth resource denial. That is to say that on the one hand, they specialize in fast earthworks, trench digging, and palisade construction, while on the other hand, they also specialize in crop burning, well fouling, field salting, and captive taking. They were a roving band of locusts that tore through the enemy countryside, obliterating their peasant base and ensuring that a given castle or city would fall to hunger or thirst in short order. These were the 10 military orders of the League of the Storm Cross as they stood in 1370, and, at this time, they represented the deadliest and most effective fighting force in the known world.